At my dad's birthday dinner my mom laughed and said I'd never catch up to my sister. 3 months later they needed me. I was always the sweet one while my sister was the six-figure golden child, and that night my mom actually giggled when I said I was working toward a promotion. I went home, signed a risky partnership deal, and built something without their applause. Then my phone rang, my sister's big investment had collapsed, my parents were exposed, and suddenly the son who would never catch up was the only one who could save them. Hi, I'm Daniel, 29, and the night my mother laughed in my face was the night I stopped trying to be the good son. It was my dad's birthday dinner. Nothing dramatic. Just lasagna, awkward small talk, and my sister Emily's latest achievement framed like a national holiday. She closed another deal, Mom said, practically glowing. 6 figures this time. Dad raised his glass toward Emily like she'd just cured a disease. I smiled. I always smiled. That was my role. For context, I work as a physical therapist. I love my job. I help people walk again. But in my house, that translated to, oh, that's nice. Emily works in finance. Which apparently translates to, God's chosen profession. Halfway through dessert, Dad turned to me. So, Danny, he said, already smirking, any promotions yet? I swallowed a bite of cake that suddenly felt like drywall. Not yet, I said. I'm building toward it. Mom giggled. Actually giggled. Like I'd told a cute joke. Oh honey, she said, waving her hand, you'll never catch up to your sister. Emily didn't even look uncomfortable. She just took a sip of wine. Dad nodded proudly at her. Some people just have it. And I swear something inside my chest shifted. Not broke. Shifted. Because this wasn't new. It was just louder. Growing up, I was the sweet one. The sensitive one. The not as ambitious one. When Emily got straight A's, they threw her parties. When I got B's, they asked if I was distracted. When she bought her first car at 23, they helped her with the down payment. When I asked for help with grad school loans, Dad said, you chose a low-paying field. I used to think if I just worked harder, earned more, proved myself, they'd finally look at me the way they looked at her. That night, staring at my mother laughing at me like I was permanently second place, I realized something humiliating. I wasn't behind. I was just running a race they designed for me to lose. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel sad. I felt done. I didn't storm out. That would have been dramatic. Memorable. Satisfying. Instead, I stayed. I refilled my dad's water. I cleared plates. I even hugged my sister goodbye. That's the thing about being the easy kid. You get really good at swallowing things. But on the drive home, I didn't turn on the radio like I usually do. I just sat in the silence and replayed it. You'll never catch up. It wasn't even the words. It was the certainty in her voice. Like my ceiling had already been decided. I pulled into my apartment complex and just sat there with the engine off. I thought about all the times I tried to impress them. The overtime shifts. The certifications. The time I worked weekends for 6 months straight to save up for my own condo down payment, no help, no cosigner. When I told them I bought it, Mom said, that's a cute little starter place. Cute. Emily bought a larger place 2 months later. Dad called it an investment property. Same square footage. Different zip code. That night I opened my laptop. Not to scroll. Not to distract myself. To check something I'd been avoiding. 3 months earlier, my clinic director had quietly offered me a partnership track. It meant more responsibility. More risk. A buy-in that would wipe out most of my savings. It also meant ownership. At the time, I hesitated. I thought, what if I fail? What if I'm not as good as I think I am? But sitting in that quiet car, I realized something uncomfortable. I wasn't afraid of failing. I was afraid of succeeding and still not being enough for them. And that hit harder than anything they'd ever said. So I went inside, opened the email from my director, and typed. "I'm in. Let's talk numbers." I hit send before I could overthink it. Not to prove them wrong. Not even to catch up. But because for the first time, I wanted to build something that didn't require their applause. I slept better that night than I had in months. I didn't know it yet, but that decision was going to start a chain reaction none of us were ready for. 3 months later, I signed the partnership papers, and that's when everything exploded. The buy-in hurt. I won't lie. Watching most of my savings leave my account felt like voluntarily stepping off a financial cliff. But the first week as co-owner? Different energy. I wasn't just clocking in. I was building something. I redesigned treatment plans, hired a new therapist, negotiated vendor contracts. I stayed late, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. And for the first time in my life, the effort felt mine. Then our clinic landed a contract with a local high school athletic program. It doubled our monthly revenue almost overnight. I remember staring at the projections with my director, now my partner, and thinking, oh. This is real. 2 weeks later, Mom called. She never calls on Tuesdays. "Daniel," she said, overly sweet. "Your sister mentioned you're doing some kind of business thing now." Some kind of business thing. "Yeah," I said calmly. "I'm a partner at the clinic." There was a pause. Then, "Well, that's ambitious." Ambitious. Not impressive. Not proud. Just ambitious. Like I'd decided to try juggling knives for fun. Then she lowered her voice. "Actually, your father and I wanted to talk to you about something." Of course they did. Turns out, Emily's latest 6-figure deal wasn't exactly what they thought. She'd taken a massive risk in a speculative investment. It tanked. Hard. And because my parents had co-signed part of it, because of course they did, they were suddenly exposed. They didn't say the word help. They didn't have to. "We just need a temporary bridge," Mom said. "You've always been so responsible." Responsible. Not talented. Not exceptional. Responsible. I sat at my desk, staring at the same parents who told me I'd never catch up, now quietly hoping I would. And here's the twist that even surprised me. I could help them. Not completely. Not painlessly. But I had the liquidity. The clinic's new revenue. My remaining savings. For the first time in our family dynamic. I wasn't behind. I was ahead. And suddenly the race they designed for me to lose. It didn't look so fixed anymore. I told Mom I'd come over Sunday to talk in person. She sounded relieved. Dad got on the phone and said, "That's my boy. That's my boy." Not because I succeeded. Because I was useful. And driving to their house that Sunday, I realized this wasn't about money anymore. It was about something way more dangerous. Power. Sunday dinner felt different. Not warmer. Not tense exactly. Strategic. Mom had made my favorite roast. Dad opened a special bottle. Emily was already there, unusually quiet. I hadn't been the favorite in that house for 29 years. But that night, I was the solution. We sat at the table, and for the first time, they let me speak first. "So," I said, calmly. "What's the actual number?" Emily shifted in her seat. Dad cleared his throat. Mom looked at her hands. When they finally said it, the number wasn't small. It wasn't catastrophic either. It was survivable. If I wrote a check, I'd still own part of my clinic. I'd still be stable. But it would hurt. And more importantly, it would reset everything. Because I knew something they didn't. If I saved them quietly, I would always be the backup plan. The reliable one. The responsible one. The one who fixes messes while someone else gets applause. Emily finally spoke. It was a smart play. The timing was just off. There it was. No apology. Just bad luck. Dad looked at me. Families help each other. I almost laughed at that. Because when I asked for help with grad school loans, Dad said, "You chose that." When I bought my condo alone, Mom said, "That's cute." Families help each other. Only when it benefits the right person. I folded my hands on the table. "I'll help," I said. Relief flooded the room so fast it was almost visible. "But," I continued, "it won't be a gift." Silence. "I'll structure it as a formal loan. With terms. In writing. And if I'm stepping in financially, I want transparency on everything going forward. Investments. Risk exposure. All of it." Dad blinked. Emily's jaw tightened. Mom gave a tight smile. "Daniel, that feels a little cold." Cold. For protecting myself. For the first time in my life, I didn't shrink under that word. "I've been warm my whole life," I said evenly. "It hasn't worked out great for me." No one laughed. Because they finally understood something. This wasn't the little brother asking for approval anymore. This was a man negotiating. And for the first time ever, they didn't know how to talk to me. The paperwork took 2 weeks. 2 very awkward, very quiet weeks. Emily stopped texting me entirely. Mom called once to ask if I was sure this was necessary. Dad tried to slip in a comment about trust during one of our calls. But here's what changed. They weren't dismissing me anymore. They were careful. When we sat down at the bank to sign everything, the energy was completely different from every dinner before it. No giggling. No smirking. No, "You'll never catch up." Just tension. The banker explained the terms: interest rate modest but real, repayment schedule clear, collateral attached to a portion of Emily's assets. I didn't gloat. I didn't act superior. But I didn't apologize either. Emily finally looked at me directly. "You really think I wouldn't pay you back?" Her tone wasn't angry. It was wounded pride. I held her gaze. "I think everyone should treat this like it matters." That was the most honest thing I'd ever said in that house. After we signed, Dad clapped my shoulder. "Proud of you, son." I almost asked, for what? Having money? Or having a spine? But I didn't. Because something else was happening that I hadn't expected. For the first time in my life, their approval didn't feel intoxicating. It felt optional. A week later, Mom invited me to dinner again. This time, there was no comparison update about Emily's career. No subtle rankings. They asked about the clinic. Actually asked. Dad wanted to know how we landed the athletic contract. Mom asked how many employees we had now. It was small. But it was real. And the strangest part? I wasn't hungry for it anymore. Because I finally understood something uncomfortable. They didn't change because I became more impressive. They changed because I became unavailable. Unavailable for ridicule. Unavailable for rescuing without boundaries. Unavailable for playing the supporting character in someone else's story. And that shift. It didn't just rebalance the family. It forced them to see me in a way they never had before. Not as the sweet one. Not as the responsible one. But as someone they couldn't casually diminish anymore. I thought that would feel triumphant. Instead, it felt calm. Like I had finally stepped out of a race that was exhausting me for years. But there was still one conversation left to have. And it wasn't about money. Hi again, it's Daniel, and the last conversation I had with my parents didn't happen at a dinner table. It happened in their driveway. A month after the loan papers were signed, I stopped by to drop something off. Mom walked me out. Dad followed. There was this awkward lingering energy, like they were waiting for something. So I said it. I need to clear something up. They both stiffened. I didn't help because I'm trying to catch up to Emily, I said. And I didn't structure that loan to punish anyone. Mom crossed her arms slightly. Defensive reflex. I did it because I'm not playing that game anymore. Silence. Dad frowned. What game? The one where I'm measured against her, I said, nodding toward the house. The one where my job is cute, my achievements are modest, and I'm always almost enough. Mom opened her mouth to interrupt, but I kept going. I'm proud of what I built. I like my life. I like who I am. But growing up in this house, it always felt like there was a scoreboard I didn't agree to. My voice didn't shake. That surprised me. For years I thought if I just worked harder, earned more, did better, I'd finally win something. But there was nothing to win. There was just comparison. Dad looked down at the driveway. Mom's voice softened. We never meant to make you feel that way. I nodded. I know. But you did. That landed. Not cruel. Not explosive. Just true. I'm not competing with Emily, I continued. And I'm not rescuing anyone without boundaries. If we're going to have a relationship as adults, it has to be equal. Mom's eyes got glossy. Dad cleared his throat in that way he does when he doesn't know how to process emotions. And then something happened that I didn't expect. Dad said, quietly, we underestimated you. No qualifiers. No comparisons. Just that. For 29 years, I thought I needed that sentence. Turns out, I just needed to stop chasing it. I hugged them both before I left. Not because everything was magically healed. Not because we became some picture-perfect family. But because I wasn't carrying the weight anymore. Emily and I still have our dynamic. She's still ambitious. Still confident. Sometimes still a little reckless. But now when Mom starts to compare us, and she slips sometimes, I shut it down calmly. I'm not in that race, I tell her. And the funny thing is, I never needed to catch up to my sister. I just needed to stop letting them decide how far behind I was. That night at dinner when my mom giggled and said I'd never catch up. She was right about one thing. I never did catch up. I built something entirely different. And for the first time in my life. That feels like winning.